I bought a 2019 MacBook Air in 2025, and you might call me an idiot, but let's talk about it. Now, 2019 was honestly 6 years ago, and it was hard to believe that. But in 2019, we had some interesting things. Drake released his album, The Care Package. Tom Brady won his 6th NFL ring. And guess what? We got a 16-inch, nice, delicious MacBook Pro that didn't have a butterfly keyboard. Round of applause for Apple. No? Okay. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the 13-inch MacBook Air. And of course, why am I reviewing it in 2025? Because if we're being honest, this thing is a load of garbage, a piece of trash, but I just feel like it's kind of interesting, so stay with me. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the design of this MacBook Air. First thing first, we gotta talk about the exterior. If you notice, this design is actually similar to what you're still getting on the MacBook Air. The only thing that's really changed is the MagSafe charger, but even the M1 MacBook Air actually came in the same exact body. There really wasn't much of a difference. In fact, you're still getting the same port selection, 2 USB-C ports and a headphone jack. Now, the only thing I do want to mention about the insides is the fact that nothing is upgradable, of course, but this MacBook Air also came with a singular fan. And if you did want to upgrade the storage on these MacBook Airs, keep in mind, Apple will give you a nice $200. And it doesn't help that the base model of this MacBook Air came with 128 gigabytes. Was that a lot in 2019? Honestly, probably not. Now let's talk about the interior of this device, which is probably really the only positive things you're going to hear me say throughout this video. But let's start with the screen. Everybody knows that Apple makes delicious, tasty Retina displays, and it's no difference with this 2019 MacBook Air. Once again, another Apple masterclass when it comes to the screen. But aside from that glaze, I do want to mention a couple of things. This screen actually only gets up to 400 nits peak brightness, meaning that viewing indoors is actually fine, but outdoors, you're kind of screwed. Also, this is a 60 Hz display, which is honestly still typical with the MacBook Air models even to this day. And you're getting some nice thick size bezels that hold a 720p HD web camera up in there. And it's not terrible, it's not trash. I mean, I'll let you guys be the judge of it.
I don't want to go to work tomorrow.
And now we're moving on to the bottom half of this device. Obviously, we get Touch ID, which doubles as the power button, which once again is also one of the only positive things I have to say about this device. It works extremely well. But now we have to talk about the keyboard. The beautiful butterfly keyboard, everybody's favorite keyboard. I'm being sarcastic. In case you don't know, any MacBook made between 2016 and 2019 outside of the 16-inch model had a butterfly keyboard. And these keyboards absolutely sucked. It's not even the fact that they were honestly uncomfortable to type on, they were also prone to failure fairly easy and were very unreliable. It even caused Apple to launch its own keyboard repair program, where if you had a butterfly keyboard, you could get a free keyboard replacement. That is how bad these keyboards were. Now, to be fair, the 2018 and 2019 models of MacBooks didn't have as much issues as the 2016 and 2017, but that doesn't mean they still didn't exist. And with this MacBook Air, honestly, the butterfly keyboard is still going strong. If you were to ask me what it feels like, imagine typing on a touchscreen with slightly a little bit more travel. That is how it feels. And as you can imagine, if you're typing for long periods of times, that could be fairly uncomfortable. With that, at the same time, some people actually like the butterfly keyboard, but as you can see, a majority didn't. And then finally, I want to talk about the trackpad on this machine, which is actually also one of the most positive things I have to say about it. This is the Force Touch trackpad that you still see on MacBooks to this day. It's large, it's nice, it supports multi-gestures, and I honestly have no complaints about it. In fact, I wish a lot more laptop companies adopted putting a bigger trackpad on their laptops for some reason. I don't know why they'd be trying to give us these
pint-sized trackpads like we can actually use them.
And then we can't forget about the speakers, which honestly aren't that bad. I would say they're mid. But now we gotta talk about the performance on this MacBook Air, and I'm gonna be realistic with you. The performance on this laptop sucks. Now I want you to keep in mind when I talk about the specs that back in the day, this was an $1,100 laptop. And for college students, you could get it for a band. And people were actually buying this. Now, it came with 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM, 128 gigabyte SSD, and a Core i5. Now, you might be like, well, the Core i5 isn't that bad. UHD 617 isn't the worst in the world, except this was a dual core processor, specifically Intel's Amber Lake Y processors, which were focused on low power and ultra mobile, meaning that its primary focus was battery life and not performance at all. Now, you might be asking, well, what can I do on this 2019 MacBook Air? And to be fair, there's not much. This thing is pretty much just a glorified netbook. Now, for watching YouTube videos, typing a document here or there and going on Gmail, just basic activities, honestly, this MacBook Air is perfectly fine for. But the minute you try anything strenuous, you're gonna hear that tiny little baby fan crank up, and then you're gonna feel the heat underneath the keys. Now, the most strenuous thing I tried was honestly video editing on this MacBook. I installed a lightweight video editor. I feel like CapCut is pretty lightweight. Let me know down below in the comments if there's an even more lightweight video editor. And I imported a 1080p 60 file from my iPhone on this MacBook Air. And to be fair, honestly, scrubbing through it, it wasn't that bad. But to be fair, I was scrubbing and able to cut through clips of a 1080p video on this MacBook Air. Now, should you go editing 4K files on it, 8K files, or applying crazy effect on this MacBook Air? Probably not, because this thing will probably die out on you. But to be fair, was cutting up a 1080p video clip that was about a minute that bad on here? It wasn't terrible, but just because it's usable doesn't mean you should do it. Probably not. But now we gotta talk about battery life on this MacBook Air. Now, to be fair, I actually ran a couple of tests on battery life when using this MacBook. The first thing I wanted to try was macOS Monterey, because that is actually what came on this MacBook Air, and the battery life experience was fairly good too. I mean, I got through the whole entire day with this MacBook Air, you know, typing documents, watching YouTube videos here and there, sending a couple emails, you know, in a Starbucks, drinking my matcha because I'm a quarter zip type of guy. But then I updated it to Sonoma, because Sonoma is actually still supported up until 2026 so far, and that is the max macOS that you can get on this device. And Sonoma was, well, it was quite the experience. Actually, it really wasn't. It was laggy, stuttery, and you could tell that the Core i5 was pretty much on its deathbed when running that version of macOS. To be fair, battery life on Sonoma, it wasn't like totally trash, but it also wasn't that good either. It was actually just mid. Maybe below average if you wanted an honest opinion. Which leads us into software support. This MacBook Air currently only goes up to macOS Sonoma, and it will be only supported until 2026. But you know, the beautiful thing about Intel Macs is Boot Camp, and the fact that you can install any operating system you want on MacBooks. You can get Windows 10, 11, you can even install some Linux distros on this MacBook, which honestly might save this machine. But if you're expected to strictly use this machine on macOS past 2026, then yeah, you're cooked, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. So then, should you buy a 2019 MacBook Air in 2025? And I'm gonna be honest with you, absolutely not. And I feel like the reason why this might be an appetizing option to some of you is the fact that you see Apple and MacBook Air and you see a cheap price, because these MacBook Airs, honestly, you can find them for pretty cheap now, pretty much under $200. I found this one for around $130 to $175 trending on eBay. And to be fair, in your eyes, that might seem like a good deal, when in reality, it's really not. And if you are considering buying this device, I'm here to tell you that you are wasting your time and money, and that you should just go out and buy an M1 MacBook Air. Those MacBooks are getting extremely cheap, they're still good performers, and they'll last you way longer than this MacBook Air could ever. And I feel like the only value that you can really find out of a laptop like this will be installing a third-party software on it. These things just belong in the trash at this point. But anyways, that is the end of this video, and if you guys enjoyed it, make sure you hit that like button, and if you hated it, you can hit the dislike button, but at least leave a hate comment so we can hit the algorithm. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and let me know, are you still using an Intel MacBook in 2025?